Hello, my name is Timothy Tim, and today I'm going to talk to you about cell communication and signal transduction. Particularly, I'm going to address the signal transduction pathway involved with insulin. First things first, let's talk about cell communication. Cell communication can be defined rather simply as the way in which cells communicate with other cells. In communicating with other cells, a signal transduction pathway is formed which links the cells to one another. However, sometimes this pathway can be interrupted. In regards to insulin, the process of signal transduction begins with the introduction of food into the body. After making its way to the stomach, the food is then broken down from complex compounds into simple compounds like glucose. After being isolated from the ingested food, the glucose makes its way into the bloodstream so that it can be used to create energy for the body cells. The introduction of glucose into the bloodstream triggers the pancreas to release insulin, which would be our signal, or ligand if you will. Making its way through the body, insulin targets muscle, liver, and fat cells to continue the signal transduction process. The insulin then binds to insulin receptors, specifically tyrosine kinase, triggering the opening of glucose channels, which allows glucose to enter healthy cells and serve as fuel for the production of energy, or ATP. This maintains healthy levels of glucose in the blood and additionally maintains cell function by providing a means of production of ATP. Once enough glucose is converted to ATP, the insulin releases itself from the tyrosine kinase and the glucose channels close. The cell communication process in faulty cells begins with the same events as in healthy cells, with the introduction of food into the body. The food is then broken down into glucose in the stomach. This glucose then enters the bloodstream. The release of glucose into the bloodstream triggers cells in the pancreas to release insulin, our ligand. Targeting muscle, fat, and liver cells once again, the insulin then binds to the tyrosine kinase present on these cells. In faulty cells, or diabetic cells if you will, the glucose channels fail to open and do not allow glucose into the cell. The failure of glucose to enter the cell causes the accumulation of toxic levels of glucose in the blood and the lack of energy production in the cells. Therefore, the signal transduction pathway is interrupted due to the failure of the glucose channels to open and allow glucose into the cell. Just to review, signal communication is basically the way in which cells communicate with other cells. This communication is made possible by signal transduction pathways which link to the other cells. Remember, insulin is a ligand which attaches to tyrosine kinase receptors on the muscle, liver, and fat cells. The attachment of insulin to tyrosine kinase triggers the opening of glucose channels and the ability of glucose to enter the cell and be converted into ATP. So, those are the basics of insulin signal transduction, and I hope that's helpful.